The Watchers in the Void. The Zerath Collective did not believe in mysteries. Their empire stretched across 3 spiral arms, their fleets had broken worlds into ash, and their record of conquest was unbroken for nearly 6,000 years. To the Zerath, the galaxy was a garden to be harvested, and every lesser species was a plant to be uprooted or cultivated. They understood predators and prey. They had no patience for enigmas. And yet, Earth was an enigma. High above the Milky Way's quiet backwaters, the flagship Veilbreaker drifted in silent orbit around the blue-green planet. Its commander, Admiral Varix, stood before the projection sphere, mandibles twitching with unease. Data cascaded around him, scans of atmosphere, oceans, continents. The planet teemed with life, nearly 8 billion sentients. Rich in metals, water, organics. Technologically, the species known as humans had satellites, small war machines, and crude nuclear weapons, but nothing that could challenge a galactic power. By all metrics, Earth was a defenseless jewel, a world the Zerath could pluck without resistance. And yet, no one ever had. "Report," Varix growled. His second, Captain Threx, inclined his scaled head. "Confirmed again, Admiral. No defense platforms. No orbital fleets. The natives possess only atmospheric craft. We estimate conquest could be achieved in less than a rotation." Varix's eyes narrowed. "Then explain why the Trade Dominion never came. Or the Vrathic Raiders. Or the endless scavenger guilds that strip mine worlds until they are bone. Why does this one world remain untouched?" Silence settled. No one dared answer. It was a question that had haunted strategists for centuries. Records from other empires showed interest in Earth, but always, at the last moment, the fleets turned away. Official histories were vague, citing strategic irrelevance or unstable conditions. Unofficial whispers spoke of expeditions that never returned. Threx cleared his throat. "Perhaps superstition, Admiral. Lesser species invent fables. This Earth may carry a cursed reputation." Varix's mandibles clicked in disdain. "Superstition is a tool of the weak. We are Zerath. We do not fear backwater myths." He studied the planet again. The humans themselves seemed ignorant of their galactic neighbors. Their communications were noisy, scattered, full of petty conflicts. They fought each other constantly, wasting blood and resources without outside interference. It was absurd. To the Zerath, war was a means to expand. To humans, it seemed to be an end in itself. "Admiral," another officer ventured, "shall we mark Earth for immediate annexation?" Varix hesitated. Something gnawed at the back of his mind. His instincts, sharpened by decades of campaigns, whispered caution. "If Earth is truly defenseless," he murmured, "then why does it stand alone when even fortified worlds have fallen?" No one answered. Varix finally straightened. "We will test it. Send scout craft to the surface. Choose a concentration of their cities. Seize specimens. If there is no resistance, we begin annexation." Threx bowed. "At once, Admiral." Within the hour, the first wave of Zerath landing craft detached from the Veilbreaker and pierced the atmosphere. From orbit, Earth looked serene, clouds drifting, oceans glittering, cities glowing with electric veins. Perfect. Unclaimed. Vulnerable. Varix turned away from the sphere and paced to the viewport. His reflection stared back, chitinous armor, scarred mandibles, eyes that had seen empires fall. He felt the old thrill of conquest rising in his chest. At last, he would solve the mystery of Earth and claim its bounty for the collective. But beneath the thrill was unease. He remembered the Elder's warning before departure: "If Earth is defenseless, ask yourself not what they lack, but what they are." Varix dismissed the memory with a hiss. Humans were primitive. Earth was ripe. The collective had no reason to fear. And yet, as the landing craft streaked into the skies of the unsuspecting world, the Admiral could not shake the feeling that they had just stepped into the jaws of something vast and unseen. Chapter Hook. Moments later, the first scout transmissions arrived. They showed the outline of a human city, then static, then silence. Not a single craft reported back. Varix's mandibles tightened. The mystery of Earth had only deepened. First contact, first deaths. The silence was worse than gunfire. Admiral Varix stood rigid on the command dais of the Veilbreaker, mandibles clenched tight as report after report failed to arrive. 20 scout craft had descended into Earth's atmosphere. 20 had gone dark. "Run diagnostics," he snapped. "It must be interference. Their atmosphere is primitive but noisy." "Yes, Admiral," Captain Threx replied, claws skittering across the console. Moments later his frills flattened. "There is no interference. Telemetry was clean until the moment of contact." "Define contact." Threx hesitated, then expanded a fragment of recovered footage. The grainy image filled the projection sphere. It showed a sprawling human city, metal towers, streams of wheeled vehicles. Then, abruptly, the camera jolted. A human figure loomed in the frame, eyes fixed directly on the lens, teeth bared in what might have been a grin. The feed dissolved into static. A ripple of unease passed through the command crew. Varix's mandibles twitched. Coincidence. Mechanical failure. Nothing more. But coincidence could not explain 20 simultaneous failures. The Admiral ordered a second wave. This time, they deployed armored walkers and aerial drones alongside infantry squads. The Veilbreaker's crew crowded around the displays as the landing unfolded. For a moment, it seemed routine. The walkers touched down in a vast plaza. Drones swept over structures, mapping streets. Human crowds scattered, some screaming, others filming the invaders with handheld devices. The Zerath soldiers advanced, weapons trained on the fleeing masses. Then it began. From the rooftops came fire, not beams or plasma, but crude projectiles hurled with impossible accuracy. Drones spun out of control, crashing into alleys. Explosives detonated beneath the walkers' feet, toppling them into craters. The feeds dissolved into chaos. Screams of Zerath soldiers echoed through the comms. "They're everywhere!" Shadows in the windows. "No targets, no!" A strangled cry cut off mid-sentence. One last transmission flickered through, a Zerath trooper, visor shattered, blood spraying. His voice was a rasping whisper. "They smiled while they killed us." The channel went dead. On the command deck, silence reigned. Officers shifted uneasily, exchanging glances they dared not voice. Varix stared at the blank projection, mandibles clicking in frustration. "How?" he demanded. "Their weapons are primitive. Their technology laughable. How can they cut down trained soldiers with sticks and fire?" No one answered. Threx cleared his throat. "Admiral, permission to withdraw the remaining surface forces. We are suffering unacceptable." Varix spun, his eyes burning. "Withdraw? From a species that cannot even breach orbit? Do you suggest the Zerath Collective fears primitives?" Threx's frills flattened. "I suggest, Admiral, that something is wrong here." The words hung heavy in the air. Varix ignored them. Rage burned hotter than caution. He had crushed fortified planets, shattered fleets twice the size of his own. He would not be humbled by a backwater. "Deploy the third wave," he ordered coldly. "Heavier armor. Firepower sufficient to erase resistance. Reduce one of their cities to ash if necessary." "Yes, Admiral," came the reluctant reply. Moments later, the skies above Earth split with fire as warships launched their assault. Plasma torpedoes streaked downward, engulfing entire city blocks in molten fury. Buildings collapsed, dust plumes rising like funeral pyres. To the Zerath, it was the signature of victory, the overwhelming application of force. But the victory never came. As the smoke cleared, sensors detected movement. Thousands of human heat signatures, advancing into the impact zone. Not retreating. Not broken. Advancing. Varix leaned forward, disbelieving. The humans should have scattered, weeping, surrendering. Instead they poured through ruined streets, wielding scavenged alien weapons alongside their own crude arms. Where torpedoes had fallen, they built barricades. Where walkers had fired, they laid ambushes. "Impossible," Varix whispered. Then the ambushes turned into slaughter. Entire squads of Zerath infantry were lured into alleys and torn apart. Walkers were swarmed by mobs that tore open their armor with explosives and sheer determination. Drones were blinded by smoke, forced into crashes by swarms of human projectiles. The crew of the Veilbreaker watched in horrified silence. What was meant to be a display of dominance had become a massacre of Zerath. At last, Varix tore his gaze from the carnage. His mandibles trembled, not with anger but with something colder. Fear. "End transmission," he growled. "Recall what survivors you can. I want every scrap of their history, every record of their wars. If brute force fails, then we must understand what we are truly facing." He turned back to the viewport, where Earth hung silent and serene beneath the stars. "Because this," Varix muttered, "is no defenseless world." The truth of humanity. The Veilbreaker's war room was silent but for the hum of data streams. Admiral Varix loomed over the projection sphere, his mandibles clenched as human history unfolded before him. They had retrieved it easily enough. Earth's digital networks spilled into space without encryption, a tangled web of archives, broadcasts, and records. But the deeper the analysts dug, the stranger it became. "This cannot be accurate," Threx muttered, his frills rigid. "No species could survive this." "It is accurate," the data officer replied, voice hollow. "Multiple cross-confirmations. Independent sources. Their history is consistent. Their brutality is consistent." The sphere shifted, showing an image of mushroom clouds blossoming above cities. Primitive, but unmistakably nuclear. Varix's compound eyes narrowed. "They used these upon themselves?" "Yes, Admiral." Repeatedly, they threatened one another with extinction. And not once. Not twice. For centuries. Another image, trenches filled with corpses. Another, fleets of bombers, fire raining upon civilian centers. Another, humans in rags, standing amid ruins, eyes burning with defiance even in defeat. "They fight each other with more ferocity than most species reserve for external threats," Threx whispered. "It is pathological." "No," Varix corrected slowly. "It is instinct." The data shifted again. Climate records, extinction-level events, plagues, volcanoes, ice ages, meteors. A world steeped in death. "Earth is not a cradle," the data officer said, voice tight. "It is a forge. Every species here competes to the death. Apex predators by the dozen. Venoms, claws, diseases that can rot flesh in days. Any other sapience would have perished in millennia." He gestured at the sphere. "But humans endured. They thrived." The realization weighed heavily on the command deck. The Zerath had evolved on a world of balance, where cooperation ensured survival. Strength was rare, war rarer still. But here was a species bred in chaos. Conflict wasn't a choice. It was the marrow of their bones. "They do not fear war," Varix murmured. "They are war." For the first time, the Admiral understood the whispers that had haunted the galaxy. The legends of fleets that vanished when they approached Sol. The unspoken rule that Earth was to be left alone. It wasn't superstition, it was survival. Threx shivered. "Admiral, if this is true, then invasion is suicide. We should retreat, while our fleet remains intact." A hiss of anger cut through the chamber. "Retreat!" Varix thundered. "We are Zerath. We do not flee from primitives. We master them." Yet even as he spoke, doubt gnawed at him. His soldiers were not bred for endless slaughter. They were trained for swift, overwhelming victories. Humanity thrived on the opposite, wars that lasted generations, wars that demanded sacrifice and cunning, wars that broke the soul of empires. Varix turned back to the sphere. "Perhaps they can bleed. But they can also break." The officer hesitated. "Admiral, records show otherwise. Empires, dictatorships, invaders from within and without, humans destroy them. But never themselves. Even at the brink, they return, fiercer than before." The Admiral stared into the images of Earth's history. Pyramids rising from deserts. Cities rebuilt from ashes. Explorers crossing oceans with nothing but wood and will. Wars of fire, of steel, of machines, each more devastating than the last, and through it all, humanity endured. It dawned on him then, with a slow horror, humanity had never needed defense fleets or orbital cannons. Their defense was themselves. A collective will hardened across millennia of suffering. The chamber was cold as realization spread among the officers. For the first time in generations, the Zerath Collective had stumbled upon a foe not of weakness, but of terrifying strength. Still, Varix could not yield. To retreat now would brand him coward and traitor. "We will not abandon this conquest," he declared, though his voice lacked conviction. "Prepare the fleet. We will strike with full force. Orbital bombardments, sustained ground assaults. I want their cities burning, their populations broken. We will prove that even these monsters can die." The crew bowed reluctantly, but none voiced support. As the chamber emptied, Threx lingered. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of truth. "Admiral, you asked why no one invades Earth. Now you know. They don't need fleets. They don't need weapons. They are the weapon. And if we continue, they will teach us why the galaxy remembers." Varix did not respond. His gaze remained locked on the sphere, on the endless chronicles of blood and survival, on the faces of humans who fought and laughed and rebuilt. In his chest, for the first time in his long career, he felt something alien. Not contempt, not rage, but dread. And still, he gave the order for war. The last lesson. The Zerath fleet descended on Earth with the fury of a storm. Dozens of warships cut through the sky, plasma cannons glowing, torpedoes primed. Admiral Varix stood at the prow of the Veilbreaker, his compound eyes fixed on the planet below. He had ordered nothing less than annihilation. If humanity was forged by war, then he would crush them with one so overwhelming that no endurance could withstand it. "Targets locked," Threx reported, though his frills drooped with unease. "Fire," Varix commanded. The heavens lit with fire. Energy lances seared the surface, torpedoes carved scars across continents. Great plumes of smoke and molten earth spiraled upward. Cities crumbled. To the Zerath, this was finality. A display of power no species had ever survived. And yet, Earth did not bow. Instead, humanity answered. At first, it was not fleets or weapons. It was resistance born in shadows. Communications intercepts flared across the Veilbreaker systems, human voices, scattered but unbroken. "They're here. Hold the line. They can bleed. Hit them again. Remember who we are." Then came the strikes. Crude satellites, long dormant in orbit, suddenly ignited with jury-rigged thrusters, hurling themselves into Zerath destroyers. Civilian aircraft, repurposed within hours, dove into dropships, detonating with stolen fuel. Networks of human hackers infected Zerath systems with cascading errors, locking weapons mid-fire, turning shields inward. It was chaos. Organized chaos. "They adapt faster than we can track," Threx cried. "Every strike we deliver, they turn against us." On the displays, Varix watched as ground forces dissolved under waves of human resistance. Tanks stolen from one city appeared in another. Traps turned alleys into killing fields. Civilians wielded scavenged plasma rifles with the precision of veterans. Even children hurled explosives from rooftops. "This is not war," Threx whispered, horror in his voice. "This is survival without limit." Varix's mandibles clicked furiously. "Then we drown them in fire." He ordered the fleet to unleash its reserves. Planetary bombardment thundered, seas boiled, mountains shook. Yet every blow only seemed to awaken more of Earth's fury. And then came the moment. One of the Veilbreaker's sister ships, the Iron Fang, reported heavy resistance near a coastal city. Before reinforcements could arrive, human forces boarded the vessel. Not soldiers, miners with drills, firefighters with axes, engineers with torches. The crew's screams filled the comms before the channel went silent. Minutes later, the Iron Fang's cannons turned and fired, not at Earth, but into the Zerath fleet. The Veilbreaker shuddered as debris from its sister ship tore through its hull. "They've captured our vessels," an officer gasped. They're learning to fly them." Varix stared in disbelief as captured Zerath craft peeled away from Earth, now piloted by humans who had never before left their atmosphere. Within hours, they were fighting like seasoned raiders, striking weak points, vanishing behind the planet's curvature, striking again. It was impossible. It was happening. "Admiral," Threx said quietly, eyes fixed on the chaos. This is why no one invades Earth. Not because they cannot, but because once you begin, there is no end. You cannot conquer what refuses to yield. You cannot enslave what learns your every weapon. You cannot extinguish what thrives in fire. The truth was undeniable now. Varix's pride faltered as he looked down at the planet. What had seemed like a defenseless jewel was, in truth, a labyrinth of predators. Not merely survivalists, but a species that turned every wound into a weapon, every tragedy into resolve. He understood then, the galaxy had not spared Earth out of mercy. It had spared itself. The Admiral's mandibles trembled. "Order the retreat," he whispered. But it was too late. The humans were already among the fleet, captured ships tearing through formation, hacking signals turning coordination into chaos. Every maneuver the Zerath attempted, humans countered faster. They fought not with superior weapons, but with an inexhaustible will that no empire could match. As alarms blared across the veil-breaker, Varix knew the truth in his core. Humanity was not defenseless. They were the most dangerous species in the galaxy precisely because they looked weak. They lured arrogance. They invited conquest. And when empires came, humanity taught them a final lesson. Predators bleed, but prey can bite. The veil-breaker shuddered under explosions. Flames licked across the bridge. Varix stood tall, even as smoke filled his lungs. His last sight was Earth, still burning, still defiant, still alive. And he knew with certainty why no one dared invade this world. Because Earth did not survive war. Earth was war.